Alrighty trainers, TaeganAdventures here, and we finally have our very first Gen 5 legendary Pokemon here in Pokemon Go, Cobalion. Now Cobalion can be found in Tier 5 raids, being a legendary Pokemon himself or herself, depending on what gender you get it as. But anyway, Cobalion is one of the 4 members of the Swords of Justice, along with Terrakion, Keldeo, and Virizion, a steel and fighting type with pretty respectable stats, a base 209 HP, a base 192 attack, and a base 229 defense. Especially having that base 229, a very respectable defense, that means that it'll need slightly more manpower to take down. I would recommend a group of 3 to 5 trainers about level 35 or higher, or a group of 7 to 8 trainers, possibly even 9 to take on a Cobalion if you're level 30 or lower. But of course, bring more trainers if you need more firepower or more manpower, or if you don't have adequate counters. More details on the counters later, so stay tuned to learn how to effectively beat a Cobalion in Pokemon Go. But what I would like to go over first is Cobalion's move pool. Cobalion being a steel and fighting type means that it gets steel and fighting type moves like Metal Claw, Iron Head, and Close Combat. Those are pretty standard moves for a steel and fighting type. But of course, the very impressive thing to note is Zen Headbutt and Stone Edge, which can come in useful, especially considering its typing. Zen Headbutt would cover for the fighting type Pokemon that might be used against it. Stone Edge may be used to counter the flying types that resist close combat, as well as the fire types that will hit it with super effective stab moves. Cobalion is weak to fighting, fire, and ground type attacks. So mainly you want to use these Pokemon with fire, fighting, or ground type attacks. Of course, if you can get the stab bonus on top of that, that's a pre-recommended and pre-viable, actually the optimal way to counter a Cobalion in Pokemon Go. Of course, the gold standards in your fighting type department are Machamp and Hariyama with Dynamic Punch. Being a 2-bar charge move means that you can spam Dynamic Punch way more than Close Combat, which you're only going to fire off every so often, so you would rather run Dynamic Punch over Close Combat. You should be fine as long as you don't send in your fighting types in on Zen Headbutt Cobalion. Other fighting types you may want to consider are Lucario, Blaziken, and Ember. Those are pretty viable fighting types, but not as optimal as your Machamps and Hariyamas. Lucario, of course, is a pretty respectable boy himself. High attack stat, but not as high as Machamp's attack stat. Of course, Lucario takes super effective from Cobalion's close combat, so you might want to be a bit cautious when sending in a Lucario, especially considering Lucario's very low defense stat. It's pretty frail, it's a glass cannon, so use your Lucarios with your own discretion. You may also want to use a Heracross, which does resist close combat, but still takes super effective from Zen Headbutt here. Heracross does have a pretty respectable attack stat, but a pretty mediocre HP and defense stat, so you might want to send in your Heracross with a tad bit of caution as well. And of course, Blaziken and Ember are pretty impressive as well. Ember is a pretty thick boy as well, a pretty huge HP stat, and Blaziken has a huge attack stat as well. Now in terms of your fire types, you may also want to use a Blaziken to double up as a fire type attacker, but generally you want to use your standard fire type attackers, your sleeper picks, Moltres and Entei. Of course, you will want to send in your fire type with caution because they take super effective from Cobalion's Stone Edge. Moltres especially because it is super duper weak to Stone Edge, and it's going to pretty much mess up your Moltres, so you might want to use those fire types with caution. Well, actually thinking about it, Cobalion does have a lot of coverage, so yeah, it'll be pretty hard to take out actually. I think you might actually need more than 5 people to take out Cobalion, but never mind. Never mind that. Now, Moltres, of course, has a coverage move in Sky Attack, but as you can see, it won't be doing much on Cobalion due to it being neutral effective. Moltres with Fire Spin and Overheat will deal a lot of DPS there, even more than a Machamp with Counter and Dynamic Punch. Entei, of course, does have pretty respectable stats and is much tankier than a Moltres. Pretty respectable DPS and a pretty respectable, albeit lower, attack stat. Although it's slightly less tanky, Entei is still pretty much worth using alongside Moltres for a fire type attacking spot. And then of course there's the new kid on the block, Chandelure, who just made its appearance during the Halloween event. I think most of you should already have a Litwick in your inventory right now, just waiting on a Unova Stone for a Chandelure. If you already have a Unova Stone and already evolved up to a Chandelure, go ahead and use your Chandelures here. Of course, there are other fire types you can use to counter a Cobalion, like Heatran, which has the added advantage of not being weak to Stone Edge, and the look at at that DPS, oh my, that is really high. So Heatran, Machamp, Hariyama are just 3 of my top picks for Cobalion counters. Of course, honorable mention to Mewtwo, although it's not technically a fire type, but it does come with Psycho Cut and Flamethrower, or Confusion and Flamethrower. They both do pretty similar DPS, especially with Mewtwo's really high attack stat of base 300. In terms of your ground type users, a Groudon with Mudshot and Earthquake would do decently well, although Mudshot and Earthquake don't have the best stats in the game. Your 2 sleeper picks are going to be Mudshot and Earthquake Groudon, as well as that same moveset on a Garchomp. Now these 2 Pokemon have really good stats, Groudon being a legendary, Garchomp being a pseudo-legendary. Groudon has a massive attack stat of base 270, pretty decent HP and defense, while Garchomp has slightly lower attack, slightly lower defense, but a pretty respectable, pretty bulky HP of base 239. Honorable mentions for Hippowdon just for being such a tanky boy, pretty bulky attacker, but you wouldn't really want to use it if you already have your Groudons, your Garchomps, especially Groudon being in raids for 3 times this year so far, as well as being in research breakthroughs. And of course we have another newcomer, Excadrill, but you might want to be careful when using an Excadrill because of the really low defense. And Excadrill takes super effective from Cobalion's close combat, really brings it down in viability in its use as a Cobalion counter. And now if you're wondering about the perfect IVCPs, it'll be 1727 at level 20, no weather boost at all, and 2159 at level 25, which is under snowy or cloudy weather. Naturally, the best weather to beat a Cobalion would be either in sunny or cloudy weather. I would highly suggest cloudy weather because not only are your own fighting type attacks boosted by the weather, the Cobalion itself will be boosted by the weather when you defeat and catch the Cobalion. So it'll be naturally at level 25. It'll be powered up to level 25 already, so it's a huge saving on your Stardust, especially if you want to power up lots of Cobalion. It's not pretty outstanding in terms of its attack power, but I'm sure Cobalion, especially with that high defense and HP stat, can make for a really good wall in Ultra League. It pretty much puts it alongside Giratina Altered Form as one of the more effective walls in Ultra League. So I can see Cobalion making itself a niche as pretty much a wall, an offensive wall in the Ultra League, especially with the coverage moves that it has and the stats that it has. I can foresee Cobalion being a force to be reckoned with in the Ultra League. So yeah, that is Cobalion for you. I hope you guys are now more informed of Cobalion in Pokemon Go, how to adequately beat one, how to obtain one, as well as a bit of my thoughts on how I think Cobalion can be used in Pokemon Go. Of course, I don't have the exact statistics yet, so keep that in mind. If there are any changes or updates, I'll let you guys know in the description, as well as maybe in post-production whenever, well, basically depending on when the information or updates drop. So yeah, that's all I have to say for this video. This has been TaeganAdventures. I'm going to be signing off right now. Peace out.